This is an incredibly powerful, impactful lunar eclipse, and your life, as well as many in the collective, the entire world around us, is going to look different after the full effects of this eclipse in 6 months. Hi guys, and welcome back to Phoenician Priestess. Today we are talking about the Virgo eclipse happening at 23 degrees of Virgo on March 13th, 11:54 p.m. PST time. So for almost the rest of the whole entire world, it will be happening at March 14th. I just want to say that I have launched my new website, www.phoenicianpriestess.com. Just brand new, just brand launched. So please go check it out. Let me know what you think. I've also just launched my new Instagram, and you can find me at Phoenician Priestess. And it's still a baby Instagram, but I'm finally putting posts on. You'll see the first 2 posts, and I'm going to be using it a lot more. And last but not least, announcing the winners of the giveaway. The winners for the 60-minute natal chart reading giveaway are Hannah Villasis and Michette1688. Hannah Villasis and Michette1688. And one of these two actually commented more than once, which increased their chances of winning. So if you want to win for the next one, I pick the winners every 4 videos, which ends up being a month, sometimes a little bit more than a month. And I'll be doing this until the channel hits 1 year old. So yeah, there's still plenty of chances now. So for the winners, you guys can go ahead and book your reading in the link in the bio for your free natal chart reading. So this full moon is a blood moon lunar eclipse, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But it can be visible from most of the Western Hemisphere, but the most visible actually in North America and South America, so in the Americas, and slightly more on the western side of the Americas. But if you are in Hawaii, I believe you will not actually be seeing this moon, so I do mean continental. An old belief in traditional astrology is that where the eclipses are visible from is where in the next 6 months the collective themselves, so we're not talking about the individual level, but we're talking about mundane astrology, which does not mean more boring. It actually means the astrology of governments, countries, things like that. And also, I'm talking on a more, collective predictive level. Those are the places that will be seeing the biggest impact of the eclipse, which means also the people living in these places, the individuals, right? Because I say this a lot, we as individuals are drops within the ocean of the collective. So if a pond or a pool or an ocean, whatever, is tainted, every single drop becomes tainted. And I'm using the word tainted, but because it's easy to imagine like dye, like this is chlorophyll in water. In a sense, it taints the purity of water, right? But I don't necessarily mean in a bad thing. What I mean is when a collective feels something, because we are drops within that collective, we, just like every single drop of this water I put chlorophyll in, is gonna be feeling the impact. So if you are in some of those places where I mentioned, you will be feeling the impact of the eclipse the most. And by that, because your collective will be feeling it the most. Now, if you're not in one of these places that I mentioned, but this eclipse is really hitting your own personal natal chart hardly, then you will be feeling this eclipse very strongly. Also, if you have very strong water placements, especially in the sign of Cancer, that could be either ascendant, sun, moon, Mercury, Psyche, Mars, anything else? I would say those. Then, or if you just even have a stellium, a concentration of planets and energy in a water sign, most especially Cancer, then you will physically, emotionally, psychically, intuitively feel this strongly, even if it doesn't run through your life as like in terms of shifts and things unfolding. I would look within. Well, listen, okay, I know I started this a little by, eclipses I think scare a lot of people. And I can understand why. In the olden days, actually, people were scared of eclipses. They used to say you should stay at home and not go outside and hide and not be seen under an eclipse. And there are so many superstitions to do with eclipses. And that's because the amount of energy is insane. It is not like a regular full moon at all. And it doesn't fully astrologically even function necessarily like a full moon. And I think that's a distinction I want to talk as well about in this video. But so you're going to be feeling it. And so why is this the second time I post about this Virgo lunar eclipse? And I posted before. That's because I believe, right, modern astrology says the eclipse window opens only 7 days before. I believe 7 days before the eclipse is definitely the most potent, leading up to it, and then the day of obviously is the most potent. But I think the window, the portal for the eclipses, what I've seen in terms of watching people's behaviors, watching the news, watching crimes, watching my own predictions roll out throughout the years, watching people's mental states as well, it actually, and physical symptoms too, I think it's actually the lunar cycle before the eclipse. So like a whole lunar cycle, a whole month before the first eclipse, because eclipses always come in pairs, and up until a month after the second eclipse. That is the largest window. We could say that's like the garden, right? The gate of the eclipse. Within it, you have a garden, and then you have the front path, and then you have the window and the door, right? So what I mean by that is 2 weeks out, which is more old astrology, traditional astrology, I mean. By that, I don't mean like ancient. I mean the schooling of traditional astrology tends to look a little bit closer to what Vedic astrology says, which is 2 weeks before the eclipse. Modern astrology says 7 days before the eclipse. And of course, the actual eclipse itself is when you open the door and go into the actual house, right? In terms of how close are we getting to the energy and the rollout. I firmly believe, through years of experience, that it's 1 month before, it's 1 month after. But of course, as we get the closer to the actual 2 eclipses, that is when the energy is the most potent, and that is when it is most likely that events will indeed roll out. So for this reason, I actually posted the first eclipse video pretty early compared to other astrology YouTubers, because I knew that a lot of you were already starting to feel it, and I didn't want you to think you were crazy or helpless or emotionally weak or volatile, or I wanted you to understand where a lot of this was coming from. And I knew that it would amplify the closer we got to the eclipse. And so I wanted you to be armed and aware with the things that are going to unfold. Now, I'm posting it again now just because we are a bit closer to it, and some people are watching the videos more now versus before. And so now the energy is incredibly heightened because we are just 2 to 3 days, depending on when I post this, 2 to 3 days away from this eclipse that I've really been waiting for, the Virgo lunar eclipse happening at 23 degrees of Virgo. So what you're going to want to do, if you're, of course, not getting a one-on-one, if you're not getting a one-on-one personal reading with me, where we look at your transits and I exactly tell you exactly how things are going to unfold in your life, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to see what planets you have around 23 degrees of Virgo. If I was doing a full moon, I would use a regular full moon, I would use a much smaller orb. Because this is not a regular full moon, it's a lunar eclipse, which is supercharged. I actually, personally, this is me, every astrologer is different, I increase the orb that I look at. So anything within 3 degrees of 23 degrees of Virgo, I would call a very strong, powerful hit, which means the eclipse is very likely going to unfold external events in your life, and you're going to be feeling it very strongly, and that's going to be related to what's there. But I would actually go as far as 8 degrees. Of course, that's way less potent, but I would still think, especially with the strength of this lunar eclipse, I would say that up to that point, things between there, I would consider being activated. Second thing you're going to want to do is, this is a bit more advanced, is calculate aspects to that point. Meaning what the eclipse will be aspecting in your chart, what's it squaring, what's it trining, what's it opposing, what's it sextiling, and that will be less energetically potent than a conjunction, which a lot of astrologers sometimes have a different opinion on that, which is totally fine. This is how I kind of view things. Less energetically potent than a conjunction with the eclipse, but still definitely significant, and it will still be activating those places in your chart. And that'll give us a clue of not just one, but multiple events, multiple energies that will be active for you around that time. Okay? Now, what else to tell you? Okay, so we talked about where in the world people will be feeling this eclipse the most. We talked about the the window portals, the differing of the energy of the eclipse, the time frame between the two eclipses, so the March 14th/13th eclipse, and then the eclipse at the end of the month. I believe it's March 27th. Let me double check. Happening in Aries, the new moon eclipse, the solar eclipse. Those 2 weeks in between them are also an incredibly potent time because it's layering the energy of both. Although we are already feeling the energy of the new moon eclipse, I just think the energy of the full moon one is a bit more frantic collectively. It's a bit more erratic. The other thing I wanted to talk about is address timing beyond the window of the eclipses. Okay, so we talked about the before and we talked about the 30 days after the second eclipse and how I consider that to be the wider window, but the closer you get, 2 weeks is even more potent, 1 week is even more potent, exact day of is even more potent. But the theme of the eclipse, the changes, the seeds planted in this time, and the themes, the parts in your chart it activates, they are very important for the next 6 months until the next eclipse. For some people, some of the external events related to what it is activating will not roll out for another 6 months. For example, if this eclipse is hitting your vertex in the 7th house and your Venus in the 7th house and your moon in the 7th house and all like a few other, like also activating your Juno, for example, like these big love placements in, for example, your 7th house, the house of serious relationships, I am very highly likely to forecast, I should say, because there's accuracy in the method here, for you that you're going to find love and you're going to meet someone that's going to be a serious partner, could even lead to marriage, right? Happening at this time. And I would put the strongest predictions for the time frame around the eclipse if I was just looking at that. Now, if I had your birth chart handy, I would look at other things. I would look at all the other, planets, celestial bodies, etc. But I would tell you that to not hold on to just the eclipse date. That is the most likely and that is the most potent. And that is when you would feel it the strongest energetically. But if we have to really be fair to what the theory says, this is something that could slowly unfold within 6 months. Now I realize that I used the vertex in that example. That actually changes things. So depending on what is activating in your own chart and also the flavor of each eclipse, things could unfold much faster than the traditional 6 months or even the traditional 30-day window. Vertex is something that I'd like a whole video on, but if, for example, this eclipse is hitting someone's vertex or aspecting it somehow, opposition, etc., this is likely to have an external, life-changing, fated event happening pretty quickly. Now, because this particular eclipse has some pretty wild aspects in the sense that this eclipse is sextiling Mars, who recently went direct after being retrograde in December, and is opposing Saturn. Saturn does bring a slower energy, right? But then is trining Uranus, which is fast energy and very chaotic energy, unexpected changes, unexpected shifts, and surprises. This, to me, reads for most people, reads collectively as a fast energy. So, although I have to put in my disclaimer of this could roll out for the next 6 months, da-di-da-di-da, and it could be true that maybe a seed is planted in this time and the full result is not seen for 6 months. But I think for the majority of you listening, this is, if you are going to be one of the ones experiencing life-changing things happening, then, which is honestly going to be a lot of you in one way or another because this is a really big eclipse, then it will be happening faster, I think, closer to the eclipse actual time frame, if it already hasn't honestly started to happen within the pre-window that I talked about. This is actually a blood moon lunar eclipse, a lunar eclipse that happens where the moon appears to be orange or red or anywhere between those colors. Now, what I've actually noticed looking back is that blood moon lunar eclipses actually tend to bring events that match the name. And we're seeing this in some parts of the world right now, specifically in the part that actually this channel is named after, being the Phoenician priestess. And I'm looking here at a statue that represents the Phoenician goddess Astarte. And the Phoenician coast right now is actually witnessing a lot of massacre and bloodshed. in the western coast of Syria, and has been experiencing a type of bloodshed, even if you expand the last 2 years to where the Phoenician territories used to be. And, I don't want to get into politics. Actually, that's a lie, because on my channel I do, because astrology can be used to be powerful like that and was used by ancient courts for that purpose. But being that this is literally the name of the channel and the land that the channel is named after, and that brought the world astrology, and that brought the world the alphabet, and that brought the world the evil eye, and that brought the world so much more, is currently experiencing this, meaning the descendants of these people are being massacred by extremists, I would be irresponsible to not mention that. Also because it ties, sadly, astrologically to what's happening, I believe, with this being a blood moon lunar eclipse. Beyond that, it's actually also tying to something else that I will make an entirely new video for and just focus on that topic. But it's tied to a big transit we're seeing at the end of this month. Now, besides that, you're going to be listening to a lot of other astrologers on YouTube, and I think that's a great thing because every single astrologer interprets things differently. So, but what I do see a lot of is a lot of people talking about this lunar eclipse as solely ending energy, and I think it does create a lot of panic in people. And I'm all about, being truthful, even if it does have not the wanted effect. But that being said, I don't think that's entirely accurate with a lunar eclipse, because a lunar eclipse doesn't necessarily function just like a full moon, right? We always talk about, when it comes to the moon cycles, a new moon is like planting a new seed, new intentions, new beginnings. And this is, of course, very generalized astrology. And a full moon is endings, and that's what people always say. Think about that, because in a way, that's what the energy is happening. The moon is birthing from new and then ending. Think about that is, for something new to begin, something has to close. So there's an ending innately with a beginning, and for something to end, something beginning will flow after. And we don't necessarily need 2 weeks in between one or the other for that to happen. The other thing is, with a lunar eclipse, it doesn't function like a regular full moon. Of course, it is like energetically, it is like a supercharged, very super, like 1000x supercharged full moon, but it actually starts to function as an agent of fate. And when we have an eclipse, the moon is being utilized as a agent of fate, as an on-off switch for fate. And a side effect of that, with a full moon being supercharged, is emotionally, people feel it. Energetically, people feel it. But because the full moon, again, is acting also like an agent of fate, it, in terms of what actually unfolds, it's not always an ending. And it's not always, And also, when people are using the phrase ending, I just want you to know as well that they also kind of mean culmination. And it could also be referring to an end of a chapter and a start of a new beginning, a transformation in energy. The energy of eclipse is very much like the phoenix rising energy. It is. It's almost like if a Plutonian mixed Uranian energy, those two combined. And so it could be something transformative. It could be something epiphany-like. It's not necessarily always like an ending. So, for example, like I said, if you have a full moon eclipse in the 7th house, it doesn't, most readers you probably see online are saying a relationship's going to end, a relationship's going to end, a relationship's going to end, or you're going to put a relationship behind you. You're going to put a relationship behind you. You're going to put a relationship behind you. No, that's not always the case. You could actually be meeting someone at this time. This eclipse is also conjunct the South Node. And that will make astrologers even more say it's going to be about things that are ending, because South Node is what we leave behind. But South Node can also represent past lives. So this could be something to do with past life karma coming ahead. This could be something to do with someone from your past life reemerging. So if you had a soul connection from a past life, for example, coming back as your lover. This could be, this could also just mean a hand of fate, because the nodes, just like eclipses, are also one of the trigger points astrologically of fate. So this could just talk about something fated. Because, when we talk about, for example, aspects are energetic activations that we measure with angles. So if our South Node is getting conjuncted with this eclipse, that means our North Node is being opposed. And people will say, okay, in opposition, that's a frictional energy. What I have noticed through actual astrological practice is it's not always necessarily a frictional energy. Although, of course, that can be the case, but I kind of also see it as an activation. And where that distinction lies, I find, is based on the person's chart and their relationship with whatever sign that's in, with their own nodes, with where the node is hitting in their chart, etc. So either way, right, when we have so what I'm trying to say is just because this is a full moon eclipse, and just because it is a full moon eclipse conjunct the South Node, still doesn't mean it's going to equate to an ending. So if you're having it, for example, 7th house, 10th house, it doesn't mean you're going to get fired. It doesn't mean a relationship is going to end. That could happen. That could happen, actually, right? That is a very valid interpretation because it is valid. That is one way the energy will definitely play out. I just want to say that that's not the only way. And I think a lot of, at least, astrologers that I see just fixate on that. Whereas it is an energetic activation, and it will really depend on someone's chart and the other aspects around this eclipse in terms of what this eclipse does. And a lot of the times, and also South Node doesn't necessarily mean ending or putting something in the past behind you. It could mean bringing something from the past forward again, and it could mean activating the hands of fate. And additionally, full moon doesn't always necessarily mean ending. It could mean a build up, a culmination of the energy, which could result in something different. So again, it's not finite, a finite definition. It's not definitely something leaving per se. It could be transformation, transmutation. And with that often also comes the new beginning. So long story short, keep that in mind. Right now, like I said, you'll even hear me in these sign by signs for some of the signs talk about endings a lot. But I also try to give the other side. And that's my whole point, is that with this, there is another side. Okay. Especially I think with this one, because this eclipse is being sextiled by Mars. Mars is action oriented, and goes after what it loves. Mars is the god of war, and a sextile is a harmonious aspect. And it's also being trined by Uranus. So while Uranus does bring a lot of chaos and change suddenly, but a trine is also a harmonious aspect. And it's also being sextiled by Vesta. Vesta is an asteroid. When Vesta talks about devotion and nurture and things like this. So just looking at this moon alone, I think for a lot of people, it's not all about, F that, it's gone, it's an ending, like I said as well, how this will translate in your chart is different. For a lot of you, it could be endings. And if that ending even does come, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Okay? Finally, I want to say I mentioned that I posted a Virgo lunar eclipse video at the beginning of Feb, around a month before this eclipse is going to hit. And what I want to say, though, is some of the predictions I made on the collective level since making that video have already come true. I talked about things to do with COVID revelations coming up, and within a few days of me posting it, COVID revelations started to come up, and mainstream media channels that in the past had suppressed the truth from coming out, suppressed people who tried to bring attention to these things, suddenly started posting undeniable evidence of some things that were lied about during the pandemic. You can go see that yourself. I also talked about big news in crypto coming out that would be big enough to have an effect on the crypto sphere and the development going forward. And a few days after posting that, Trump announced the first official government crypto summit and the US crypto stockpile. And I also talked about things to do with government and politics and wars around the world and chaos. And that has also sadly unfolded. And not just that, but it's actually unfolded in the part of the world where I have my family and my immediate family. And not just that, but part of the world that inspired the name of this channel. And part of the world that gave the world astrology. Basically, I want to say that the predictions I made in the last video came true, so I'm keeping them in this video. You can go, so you can still keep watching and it will flow into that and you can see them come true. The collective portion as well, we're going to talk about the collective energy because I think for a lot of people, love is in the air this eclipse season, even if your 7th house is not getting hit, and I'll tell you why. And then we go into the all sign. Hi guys, so after I recorded the video portion, I actually decided to not repost the last eclipse video because you can just go back and watch that yourself, and also because all the information in this one was enough to populate a whole video. So if you want your all signs, which I highly recommend you listen to, the all signs will tell you generally, of course, because it's not the same as if we did a one-on-one reading, will tell you where this eclipse, where in your chart, so where in your life this eclipse will be bringing these faded, massive, big changes. And in the other eclipse video, the original one that has the all signs, I also go into the themes and you will hear all my other predictions that have not come true yet. So to go and listen to that, I will link it in the comments below and I'll link it in the description box, and go click on that to watch your all signs and watch my thematic collective level personal predictions. So since we're not doing a one-on-one personal reading, unless we are, and you can book that in the bio, then I recommend you listen to both the predictions in the collective side, and also listen to your ascendant, prioritize your ascendant, and then also listen to your sun and moon. Those 4 things merged together should cover your basis of more or less where this eclipse is activating for you. Okay, so as a repeat, to listen to your all signs and to hear the thematic predictions that are happening collectively but will affect a person by person basis, click on the Virgo eclipse video where I'm wearing a white top that I will link in the description box and also in the comments below. And the information you have from this video, which talks more in detail about the timing unfolding, about endings or not endings, about where in the world you'll actually be feeling the eclipse, and about some of the predictions that have already come true, and how eclipses function differently than just regular new and full moons, will help you understand better how to apply the energy predictions in the last video. Okay, thank you.